On this channel, sometimes I talk about video games. Today, I'm here to recommend a game you have probably seen, but might have written off, Zenless Zone Zero. If you've seen anything of this game already, chances are you've already decided whether it's for you or not. And I'm here today to tell you to give it a second chance and why. But I want to emphasize, this video is not sponsored. I receive no benefit from promoting this game, and I'm only doing so because I want to, and I think it deserves the praise. On its surface, you probably already know what ZZZ is. A gacha game featuring a cast of cute and sexy characters. Based on the surface level info about this game, I originally wrote it off. Don't get me wrong, I love these kinds of characters, but I'm never quite able to stick with these types of games when there's no substance to back up that initial feeling of attraction. In the same way, I love desserts, but I rarely consume candy because it's often too sweet and I quickly grow bored of its static one-dimensional flavor. To my pleasant surprise, ZZZ is absolutely worth my time and money, and perhaps yours too. But at the very least, hopefully in this video, I can convince most of you that ZZZ is more than just a Gooner game. But before I do that, please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you. So, what exactly makes Zenless Zone Zero stand out? It's 1. Smart game design that respects your time and fair monetization. 2. Technological innovation. 3. Characters with depth. 4. A world brimming with pure passion and cultural appreciation. And 5. A smart use of story. The first thing I want to talk about is the core gameplay loop. It's quite good. Forget the endless grind of typical gacha games. ZZZ's daily routine is incredibly efficient, taking just a few minutes. Every day, when you open the game, you'll receive a bunch of notifications about free items the game just gives you for logging in. Then, there are 4 daily quests that are very easy and take about a minute to do. Log in, set up shop at your counter, play the daily scratch-off ticket, and drink a cup of coffee. Every one of these actions rewards you with the game's premium currency, called polychromes, relevant upgrade materials for the characters you obtain, and also the regular currency used for the normal in-game small transactions. Not only that, but the daily scratch-off that doesn't cost anything in-game or otherwise also has a chance to win additional premium currency. The coffee then plays into another clever system. It encourages focused play and prevents burnout, ensuring you're not pressured to play for hours. The coffee doubles the materials you get when you're farming and temporarily raises the maximum energy cap, a fantastic incentive to go and farm for some of those upgrade materials once you've done your dailies. There's also a backup system, so if you're ever unable to log in for a few days, all that energy you're passively accumulating above the cap is actually stored in a large backup reserve if you ever do want to rot at home and farm all day. It's worth noting that both the login rewards, simple daily quests, and energy limits are game designs borrowed from the older and longer-standing MMO genre, which the developers of those games had to figure out in order to create a worthwhile player experience for both hardcore and casual audiences. So if you happen to have previously played a recent MMO, I think that makes getting into this game just a tad easier for you. Another gold star design choice is almost everything in this game will reward you with the premium currency. What I found is that if you're actually playing the game, like doing the timed events, collecting the daily login rewards, and playing through the main story and side quests, you will have enough currency for the character you want. Maybe not every character, but they advertise them in advance, so if you see a character you like, you can absolutely go out of your way to start farming. And by farming, I literally just mean enjoying the activities in the game at a comfortable but consistent pace. The reason why I think this is so brilliant and worth highlighting as my first point is that before, my impression of these types of gacha games was that it was fucking impossible and you were forced into spending more and more and more and more. But no, in this game at least, you can guarantee the character you want if you're unlucky enough. This means that yes, you can get lucky and roll for your character and not spend much at all. But if you need a character, you can simply save up about 26,000 or so polychromes and you'll get the character that you want. All in all, I'm a big fan of the core systems at play here because this means all that is really required of me is that I log in for a few minutes in the morning, and then at the end of the day, when I'm brain dead and worn out, I don't have to think much. I can just log in and enjoy what the game has to offer. The premium currency required will accumulate naturally and without me even having to spend money. To me, this means the gacha isn't actually a terribly offensive deal breaker. And lastly, while upgrading characters to a sufficient level of strength does take a certain amount of materials, do you need Apex level characters in order to experience the story? No. The icing on the cake is that advanced teams are not required to actually experience the best that this game has to offer. Everything, including playing as the premium characters, can be experienced and enjoyed at your own pace, for your leisure, without a requirement of grinding. Although meanwhile, you are rewarded with the game's premium currency for playing. There are people who play competitively, and you absolutely can grind or spend money to accelerate the process. But for the purpose of entertainment, this game has been built from the ground up to not become your second job and instead be an experience that you can relax to from your job. So with that being said, that you can simply enjoy the game's experience and the currency will naturally come, let's dive into what actually makes this a wonderful experience. I can keep this point simple. It is astounding that this full and complete game runs on mobile. And despite that, it is astounding that this game also looks and feels great on a full-fledged gaming PC. For me, as mentioned above, I like to kick back at the end of the day, chill on my couch, maybe have a drink in hand, and play this like a console experience. However, it somehow also looks great at a reduced resolution on a smartphone? I'd say about 80% of the time I'm playing on PC, but every now and then I want to spoil myself by laying in bed and playing on my phone, like full-on degen comfort maxing rotting time. And I will play through the game's story missions on my phone, and sometimes I actually think it's an even better experience. As you can see by the comparison footage on screen, yes, it does look better on PC. But somehow when it's running on your phone and you're looking at it on your phone screen, I'm not saying it looks better, but the experience is different, and sometimes that experience is better. Sometimes the text is easier to read because the design language of the UI is, I guess, intended to be read from the average phone screen size, but sometimes it's literally just the world and its details that hit different when your phone screen is 4 inches from your face. After diving deep into this game, I can tell you with a straight face that the detail in this game, its missions, its side content, its free roam world, for example, is worth an up-close look that's just easier to get on the mobile experience. I have some footage recorded on a Galaxy S25 Ultra, an iPhone 16 Pro Max, as well as an older iPhone 11, just for a sense of comparison on how this game looks on both Android and iPhone, as well as how it runs on older hardware. I did have to turn down all the graphic settings on the older iPhone, but I'll be real with you guys, I somehow think that this looks even more charming in a way. Not technologically impressive, no, but the more jagged textures of the lower resolution evoke distant memories of PS2 era games. Even on the lowest possible settings, the visuals of this game manage to overflow with charm. If you have an iPhone made within the last 5 years, I want you to know you have the ability right now to go about your day walking around with the equivalent of a fun PS2 game in your pocket, backed by current innovations of mobile game design that make it convenient to start and stop playing, accommodating to the demands of your day. Now that I've established that on a fundamental level, this is a good game on its gameplay design as well as a technical marvel in its own right, let's get into the important stuff, the juice. It's hardly a secret that the draw of this type of game are its characters, and not only on their visual appeal, but also their personalities and archetypes. And I have to say, as usual, MiHoYo knocks it out of the park. On a purely visual level, I really like the members of Victoria Housekeeping. This is quite well known already within the ZZZ community, but for those of you who are new, the designs of this faction are all references to classic horror movies and monsters. Lycon is a wolf Thyren being the race of like animal-ish people in ZZZ, calling back to werewolves. Rena resembles a ghost, Ellen is a shark thyron connecting her to Jaws, and Corin, with her bolts and rivets on her uniform, resembles Frankenstein's monster. However, it is never surface level with these characters. Lycon does not merely fill the werewolf trope. The way he dresses, his manners, his style of speech, they are all refined. Aside from his wolf-like appearance, he much more resembles a member of Regality, which in antithesis to werewolves are all vampire tropes, inherently showing character depth in conflict within the tropes that he resembles. Later, in an expansion of his initial story, we learn that he used to be friends with a vampire, but they disbanded the alliance between them because of a conflict of their values. This recontextualizes his original design, but in a good way. It adds additional depth to his original character, showing that he likely did pick up some regality from his vampire-like friend, and in that process, he decided for himself to be gentlemanly in spite of his outward bestial appearance. Rena doesn't just resemble a ghost in her posture, but also floats around in her gameplay. I'll be honest, I don't have any other big-brained stuff to say about her, but in terms of fashion, Rena's red harness stood out to me and reminded me of something similar worn by an artist named Jackie Y in her music video. I think this is a very good look, and it highlights that even if not everything in this game is a brilliant homage or one that you or I pick up on, at least the core fashion of this game is almost always rock solid. Ellen has a punk kind of style, and her outfit more prominently features sharp metal spikes, which subtly remind the viewer of shark teeth. And then we have Corin, who's a more ordinary girl. But in addition to the metal rivets I pointed out earlier, in her lore, it's revealed that she needed extensive surgery and has these long scars across her body, and I also think she always looks pretty sickly looking no matter what scene she's in, which all comes together to, again, subconsciously evoke images of either Frankenstein's monster or at the very least a generic zombie, especially with the sickly green color of her hair. She uses a circular chainsaw as her weapon, whose iconography is reinforced in her outfit via the metal teeth at the end of her dress, which happen to resemble the same circular saw blade that she wields. For my final praise of this game's character design, I'd like to bring your attention to Caesar. Caesar is the leader of a biker gang, hence why she has a shield that's a wheel and a sword made out of a motorcycle's handlebar and brake. She wears this cool jacket with one sleeve bellowing in the wind, which is super anime. She has a wolf cut, which goes really far with me. She's got this like really short dress, which is a little but I love the detail that she just wears shorts under it because she completely comes off as the kind of girl who would do that. And here's where it all comes together. She's the leader of a biker gang, and her story arc is about balancing the needs of her gang versus the needs of the community that her gang protects and serves. Being a leader is something that she wants to be. It's never about whether she can do it or not, and it's never about her needs versus others' needs. It's always about her understanding what her role is and how to set about it. In certain moments of downtime, it's revealed that despite being this selfless hero and leader, she's actually kind of a girly girl.
If you're gonna take my picture, Proxy, can you make me look cute?
Like, she's really interested in romance movies, and she wants to go to the city more often and experience city life, but she easily lets go of these things because she understands her responsibilities of her role in life. In my view, Caesar embodies those who are born in the year of the ox. In Chinese astrology, oxen are associated with being hardworking, dependable, down-to-earth, honest, patient, and persistent. In real life, ox are beasts of burden. It is their lot in life to use their strength for farm labor, and as centuries turn into millennia, they have willingly, diligently risen every day and carried out their duties. Just like Caesar, that's just her personality. But visually, do you know what seals the deal? These little stars on her head that look like horns. Her little faux horns point forward, indicating her direct and honest nature. Her freaking name is Caesar King, which is the most literal representation of her role in her story. And we know as the audience that she wishes she didn't always have to fulfill this role, and yet she does so dutifully every single time. Straightforward, honest ox. Since I've gotten to praise and highlight some of my favorite character designs, I'd like to end this section with an example of a character I originally hated and did a complete 180 on when I actually saw her in the game and in the story. Luciana de Montefio, aka Lucy. When I saw this character, I was like, ugh, what is this tsundere bait? Great, she's one of those. Like, look, I understand that a character like this might be a substantial revenue stream for the company, but man, it's so exaggerated, and even knowing that frustrated me further. I was not having it. But then, when I actually played through her part of the story, it didn't feel so offensive as it did back then before I saw her characterization. In her story, we see that she actually wants to be the leader of the biker gang that Caesar is. She's often shown talking about when she's going to take over or challenging Caesar to duels. Yet in the moments of downtime, we see that Lucy actually does care and really worries about Caesar. I'm not up to date on all the Lucy lore, but I do recall a recent in-game event when you deliver food to characters and it was shown how Lucy ordered food, but when we gave it to her, turns out it was actually for Caesar, who was working herself ragged. I know that this is literally the tsundere character trope and there's nothing innovative here, but at least when we do get the real in-game portrayal of these characters, it feels satisfying to see the actual execution of the character tropes.
Of course, you'll be handling the cremation.
You got it! Just gotta burn everything to smithereens!
Lucy? Lucy?
Can you all stop goofing around?
Don't be upset. It's not every day we get to have fun with the cremation ceremony.
You don't have fun at our guest expense! Bernice! Put away the flamethrower, now! You guys are driving me nuts!
The characters in this game aren't the only S-tier element at play. The playable world of ZZZ is gorgeous and packed with not only side quests and Easter eggs that also reward polychrome, but also the literal areas in the game show the story. For example, there's a day-night system that changes who's out and about at different times of day, allowing you to catch spontaneous, missable but recurring events depending on what time you're going about your daily tasks. In the recurring NPCs you see, almost all have their own minor story arcs and quests associated with them. Beyond the NPCs, the devs can't help but put their love of culture into the very buildings that make up the cities they sculpt. At this point, it's no secret that the core team of this game are real film buffs. I mean, they made the protagonists run a movie store, and one of your daily quests is to pick out movies that match the trends of the day. But I think with the vibe of the starting area and the core cast that came with the game on release, I've got an inkling that streetwear is also one of their passions. What about car culture? One of the side quests in this game that also rewards you with polychromes is literally just running around taking photos of riced out cars. There's a tuning shop in this game where you upgrade your Bangbu, but do you know what else has tuning shops? Car culture. The name of the owner of the in-game tuning shop? Enzo, like Enzo Ferrari. And the symbol on top of his shop, that's a car part called a turbocharger. Often people who are into street racing will add aftermarket turbochargers alongside a whole system of other parts, specifically to make their once ordinary car much more powerful. And doing so also requires tuning at a tuning shop. Beyond cars, there's a very loving nod to otaku culture. Besides the fact that the main appeal of the game is to otaku sensibilities, and the motto of MiHoYo is otaku save the world, Victoria Housekeeping very obviously plays on maids found in maid cafes. Section 6 feels much more like an idol group with their feral fans, and there are also smaller nods all over the place. Like, for example, I think that Ambi somewhat resembles 2B from Nier Automata. This next example is much more personal, but on that personal level, I'm very pleased with the inclusion of distinctly Chinese culture. Growing up as an ABC, I noticed that many of my games were made by American studios, and I also noticed that a lot of my games were made by Japanese studios that include very culturally Japanese objects in their gameplay. Now, as a kid, being surrounded by my family, as well as visiting our extended friends and family when visiting China, I saw how rich and unique Chinese culture is, and I always wondered why China never produced games or any other kinds of media for international consumption. And while this is a very personal highlight, I think it's worth celebrating how MiHoYo doesn't shy away from including distinctly Chinese elements, such as the unapologetic use of names that are very clearly Mandarin Chinese. Zhuyuan, Qingyi, and plenty more of the various NPCs in the game all retain the phonetic pinyin spelling of their original Chinese names. Qingyi and Zhuyuan specifically are overflowing with traditional Chinese culture. Zhuyuan is another very straight-laced by-the-books person. She's a public safety agent and she follows procedures. She doesn't give much leeway, but in the performance of her duties, she always gives people the benefit of the doubt, never wanting to see them as a criminal. And despite being overworked, she always finds the time to stay in touch with her parents. She's also kind of innocent.
I'm wearing some makeup today. Does it look weird?
Which only builds on her appeal. All in all, I feel like she is the blueprint of a model child in Chinese culture. Hardworking, just, and yet still makes time for family. Qingyi, on the other hand, is more peculiar. She's supposedly a robot, but despite what you might expect, she's a lot more nuanced than Zhuyuan. I really like her for this reason. You would think that the robot character is the straightforward one who doesn't bend the rules, but instead, Qingyi is depicted as someone who holds a lot of wisdom accumulated over many years of service. She has these very particular things that she likes, like poetry. Her weapon is a staff reminiscent of Wukong, like the Monkey King, but then she can also break that staff apart into pieces and use them as nunchucks like Bruce Lee. In her speech, she refers to spiritual concepts such as karma, and most of all, she drinks Chinese tea. I have to go off topic for a bit here because I seriously love how freaking traditional she is. Because I see so much of myself in the things that she likes. Like in the character select screen, she says, "Let me finish this cup of hot water." Like if that's not the most Chinese boomer thing, I don't know what is. And in Zhuyuan's cinematic, she's shown making Chinese tea over a tea tray. I literally have this and I make my tea this way. I am someone whose cultural connection is incredibly important to me. It might be the first or second most important thing to me in my whole life. So seeing this character, who is usually reserved even when they know something's up, who speaks in proverbs and poetry, who drinks tea and hot water, makes me really happy. Both because I can personally identify with her, as well as it's satisfying my broader childhood wish that there are high quality Chinese games which lightly have elements of broader Chinese culture sprinkled in, just like the Japanese games that I grew up with. Besides what can be considered traditional Chinese culture, more subtly though, sprinkled in are references to modern Chinese culture. The city design, specifically of 6th Street and Lumina Square, reflect what cities in China really look and feel like. I love the addition of a milk tea store and the girl who runs it being a minor character. A lot of temporary events have a plot that essentially revolve around delivering food. And while here, Uber Eats is ridiculously expensive and kind of bougie, when I was in China, which was around 2019, ordering food delivery seemed far more normal and affordable. In referring back to the Chinese names intermingled with English, I also must point out that their pronunciation in the English voice acting of the game is spot on. There was obvious care and direction given to the English voice actors in pronouncing the Chinese names in this game correctly. Altogether, whether it's appreciation of film, street fashion, Chinese culture, whatever, I assure you from head to toe, this game is oozing with cultural appreciation, from the main characters to the side characters to the semi-open world filled with Easter eggs. Oh, and did I mention that the entire soundtrack of this game is a total banger? Well, you would know. You've been listening to it this entire video. Lastly, the final entry I'd like to highlight in this lively and rich world is the setting itself. Not the open world, but the ideas and themes that exist in the background. I really love the setting of ZZZ as it's post-apocalyptic, but not the apocalypse that you typically think of. It's a post-world-shattering event, but society is still hanging on. The world of ZZZ feels comforting and familiar because what I see are characters who are trying to adapt to the new world brought on by an apocalypse, despite the fact that society remains somewhat intact. This is a reflection of our current world, A post-COVID world where we went through 2 years of an earth-shaking, life-changing traumatic event. The world rapidly changed in the way it works due to what it took to survive, and now even though things are stable, we're all still adjusting, trying to find that sense of societal normalcy while also trying to move forward. As far as I know, this is the only example of popular media that so closely resembles a post-COVID society in the way characters must acknowledge the hardship of their situation while doing their best to remain cheerful. Remaining cheerful is a critical component of societal structure and cohesiveness. Right now, we live in an age of cynicism and negativity. And one of the things that fills me with joy and comforts me when playing through the ZZZ main story, events, and side quests is watching the characters experience negativity, and in those moments, I can see the internal discomfort and struggle on their well-animated facial expressions, and scan and look for a way to look on the bright side. Honestly speaking, I would love to live in a world that is more like the one portrayed in ZZZ, because what I see is a harmonious society, not one without conflict entirely, but one where it seems that the main characters involved at least all believe that human society is worth saving in the face of imminent apocalypse. To me, the setting of ZZZ resembles our own, but it acknowledges the uncertainty and grief from the past few years while still promoting and asserting the existence of goodness and encouraging us all to remain positive and to find a way forward. I'll be straight up here. The story does exactly what it needs to. I don't care that much about the overarching story, but it's there to sufficiently tie in these wonderful characters together, take them all over this beautiful cityscape, and to develop their character arcs. There is certainly a sense of intrigue, and over the long run, the story slowly moves us towards answering questions about the world and the two protagonists, and it does build some hype. But much like a TV series with multiple seasons, this plot unfolds slowly. The subplots that inch us closer to resolving the mysteries laid out are okay, but that's all they need to be to get these wonderful characters interacting with one another. I feel pretty satisfied having finished all of the story content so far, and I hope to see the overarching plot resolve in a satisfying way, but for the time being, the details of the plot don't matter as much to me as how freaking awesome a lot of the execution of it all is. There were some awesome anime moments in the Bellobog Industry arc. The Sons of Caledon was surprisingly touching. I loved the police arc and how it explored how the main heroes are technically criminals even though they set out to do good. And building up to the climax of season 1, I loved seeing the cunning hares from the first story arc being willing to put their lives on the line to protect us from the suspicion and scrutiny of the most recent protagonists at the time from section 6. As is the thesis of this video, I'm happy to heavily recommend playing this game because, like the TV and cinema analogy, this game alongside great TV provides outstanding entertainment. It wouldn't be very fair for me to make a video this long full of praise, however genuine, if I didn't also mention some criticism and constructive feedback for the devs, who are hopefully watching and have been enjoying the video. I know that this game is rated T for teen, but I wish it was a little bit more self-aware with its sexuality. Despite how pleasant and positive the overall tone of the game is, I find myself wanting the game to explore the notions of serious romance or sexuality in a mature way. As the game is currently, Jane is the closest we got at a seductress, but it's never able to be acknowledged in the narrative, which is why this character fell a little flat for me. Almost all of the characters are sexy, so why is Jane treated differently? Because she's a criminal psychologist? No, it's because as an undercover agent, one of the ways she fulfills her mission objectives is by flirting with the bad guys. But it's really weird how in a game where everyone is 11 out of 10 gorgeous, it's only during Jane's story arc where we see both the character and bystanders who are aware of her outstanding beauty, which is never recognized or touched on in other character stories. When I realized this, I realized that one of this game's strengths is also one of its weaknesses, as this sudden inclusion and acknowledgement of a character's sex appeal and beauty felt a bit tonally inconsistent with everything that had been presented to us both before and after her story. This is a very, very wholesome game, almost Disney-like in the tone of its story. And like I said earlier, this is fantastic as a piece of media that comfortably fits as a form of daily entertainment. Not everything needs to be profound or absolute cinema, and yet, as a piece of superb entertainment, ZZZ manages to be so much more than that too. I'm making this video because I am honestly astonished at what MiHoYo has been able to make out of a simple mobile gacha game. So if you feel like a mature look into romance, relationships, or an introspective look at an adult character's relationship to sexuality is pushing the limits of what they can do, to that I say, it is possible, as this entire game is exceptional and raises the bar of what's possible from a mobile gacha game. ZZZ is surprisingly a fantastic game. For the first gacha game I've looked into, I found it to be surprisingly free-to-play friendly, and I chose to support MiHoYo with the $5 a month subscription to support the devs and give thanks to an amazing experience. Is a live service free-to-play gacha game necessarily evil? I think the answer is no. If this is the genre that makes ridiculous money, ZZZ has been a very interesting experiment showing us what a ridiculously talented and passionate development team can do with the ridiculous income generated by a successful gacha game. And I think this experiment shows us that people who love games, people who love otaku culture, can deliver an outstanding experience with its story, setting, and characters in a technically impressive format where the vast majority of what it has to offer is completely free for everyone. So, should people stop calling it a gooner game? No, I think it's really funny. We should keep calling it that, as there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that sex sells. But for everyone who is wondering if this game is anything more than the memes, then yes, Zenless Zone Zero is to television what Metal Gear Solid is to movies. It is peak, and within the video game format, it distinguishes itself through the same differentiation between cinema and television. This was a much longer video than I usually produce, and since you've watched to the end, you must have been really engaged with it. One last time, please like the video to support my channel and leave a comment about your personal thoughts on any of the topics covered. I read every single one of them. And if you really want to support me, please send a few bucks my way on PayPal so I can keep polling for the waifus in this game. Or if you work at Hoyoverse and found this video as helpful feedback or positive promotion, here's my UID. Please consider sending some polychromes my way in exchange for the work I put in and expressing my genuine and sincere love for your game. I am the Content Savant. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.
The shining golden side. Let your inner spark ignite. Find a treasure, a growing bright. Reach out for it and take a flight.